everyone. Thanks for that wonderful welcome and awesome talk. Thank you, Melissa. So I'm Erin Sardo. I work at Slack, and I'm here to chat about supporting major launches as a staff plus IC and why you should do it and why it's important. So first question here, rough show of hands, who here has contributed or participated in a major launch of some variety? All right, that is a lot of hands. Cool. Preaching to the choir. So when I break down a launch in terms of kind of importance and complexity, these are kind of the axes I think about. There is the visibility axis on this purple y-axis here. Is there a massive marketing moment? Is this invisible? There's, two ranges there. There is the complexity axis on the orange x-axis there. Is this straightforward? Is this complex to roll out? And there's the reverberability component on the green z-axis. Is this a one-way door? That changes a lot of your calculations. And there's one octant that I find persnickety. This is that octant, and I think you need a release captain here. You may also choose to have release captains here or here, depending on your org and your, threshold of risk and everything else. But I'm going to focus here. And to me, kind of the really key core criteria here are you have multiple features that have varying degrees of overlap going out together. You have high visibility, and you have some kind of complicated rollback plan. So what is a release captain? A release captain is your router, your ringleader, your DRI, your source of truth. They plan and oversee engineering tasks. They are the unifying force across your sub-features. They are not your do-everything person. They are not on the hook for each and every last thing. So what does that actually mean? So they are there to help derive the internal engineering milestones for release safety. They're there to conceive of and help make explicit the environments for testing. They're there for your rollout and for your rollback strategies. There are many other tasks that are required for a successful launch. You all are very familiar with these things. These are not all the responsibility of the release captain. Do not fall into that trap. Things like QA and bug triage and, most certainly, press and external comms are not the release captain's problems. Do not fall into that problem. There are a couple things that, depending on how much support you have and how solid your program management team is, and do you have one of those people assigned to this launch, could be shared with the release captain, like internal milestone communications that could be shared. Certainly coming up with a spreadsheet and really informing the exact criteria of things that need to go out during launch week or prior is something that should be shared between the release captain and program manager, but certainly not solely owned by them if possible. And then the other major trap, your timeline. The release captain's job does not start and end the week of launch. Do not fall into that trap. There is a lot of work that comes into the pre-planning of a major release, a la 2 months to like 3 cycles ahead of time, that has a lot of work that needs to be dealt with. So, thoughts for future release captains in the rooms or those who will be guiding them in the future. Here are some of the things that I've thought about. First and foremost, your ethos. You are there to delegate, to aggregate, to communicate. You see the puzzle, not just the individual pieces. You know how everything fits together. You inspire the frameworks, not the implementations. For dashboards, for flag coordination, your job is to inspire how are all these things going to go out. Please do not fall into the trap of building out the entirety of your health dashboard for the major launch on your lonesome. You will not succeed. Frequent and predictable communication. Again, feature DRIs can be plentiful. They need to know who to talk to, when, how often, what's happening next. That is your job. So flags are tough. I don't know if anyone else struggles with them nearly as much as I do, but boy howdy, sometimes they are a pain. Here are some things that have continually tripped up me and my teams in the past. Consistency factors. Does the same user need to experience the same feature across each platform, mobile, web, PlayStations if you run on that, at the exact same time? What about users in an organization? Does everyone within a team need to have the exact same feature at the exact same time? All of those things change how you have to configure your flags and what the rollout schedule are. Customer ordering. Are you an organization that has a fast track and a slow track? Do you need to warn admins 2 weeks ahead of time before you launch something out? Can admins decide, ooh, actually, I want to be an early adopter? That I'm normally a slow track user, but like that feature's cool. Can I shuffle my ordering? Like, well, maybe, but do you have the infrastructure to set that up? Can you actually swap them from allow lists without screwing things up? Only you know. But think about it. How quickly does each cohort get one of these features? Some features are really risky. Some are not. The percentage ramps change. rollbacks. And then lastly, do you have a minimum version that is required to be in production? How are you enforcing that? Do your flags enforce that for you? Do you have mobile releases that take 3 weeks to get through the App Store? Plan that ahead of time. Those are all problems that, at least I have experienced. And then a note on multiple flags. If you're anything like my major launches, you start these things, 9 months ahead of time, and each team is implementing their own feature with their own flag that never talks to another flag, and it's this whole giant pile of spaghetti, and you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, we have 50 flags and we need to launch them all on the same day. What do we do? So here are 3 strategies that can be used in tandem or on their lonesome. You can just consolidate them. Like, hey, let's just swap all these little flags for this big one. Cool, that sometimes works. You lose the flexibility of being able to turn them off in production later, but maybe you don't care. You can pre-launch them. Sometimes this little sub-feature only matters if you can get into the big feature. Launch that ahead of time. If you turn it off later, great, but it's not a problem on day of. And then some features, systems allow you to tie flags together, which is pretty cool, but also, kind of complex. And is that actually going to work? And do you understand how that works? And do you have an on-call system that is going to be able to let you page the person who actually understands how that works so that, when something goes wrong, you have support? So those are all fun. Testing environments is another one. Under what conditions should all these different sub-features be tested together? What happens if feature foo drops out of the release, but feature bar was tested with it? Oh, sometimes that's fine, sometimes it's not. The release captain is the one who gets to make that call, and whether or not that's okay, or whether or not you need to have contingency plans for those types of things. And that feeds into your engineering milestones. It is critically important for you to understand when your decisions are going to be set that affects those timelines. Do you need to know when your minimum feature set is sorted so that you can do all those testings and spin up the right testing environments and then have enough time to actually catch bugs in all those different configurations? Same thing for all those not quite blocking but really nice to have features that every PM has a list mile long. You need to figure out when that gets cut off at some point, preferably before 24 hours before launch. Depends on your PM. Flag consolidation, how far in advance does that need to happen? Code complete, everyone here is familiar with. And then we talked about project health dashboards. That's something that should not be done 12 hours before launch and you just kind of pray that everything actually worked out and all your metrics are actually working. You want to have that done ahead of time. How and when does that need to happen, and when are your feature DRIs actually contributing to that? And lastly, a quick note on picking a release captain, especially for the engineering managers in the room. Please, for all that is holy, pick someone who has time to do this. Do not pick the poor person who is the DRI for the major feature in the release to actually be your release captain. That's not nice. Just please don't. Pick someone who has time. In my experience, this is like 50% of your time, and that lasts like 2 months before the release, just corralling everyone into the right strategies. Pick someone who enjoys working with others. Pick someone who can communicate clearly, or at least is close enough to that you can coach them through it. And pick someone who has a familiarity with launching features so that their gut check on is that a good idea is strong enough that they can actually, course correct throughout the entirety of the launch. This is a really attractive, visible opportunity, and a lot of junior candidates are like, ooh, wait, me! And then really consider whether or not they're ready for that opportunity, or whether this is a really good opportunity for them to shadow someone with more experience, or have a reverse shadow is there to catch them. Because again, some people don't really like sinking or swimming in a very high visible moment, or you may not have the actual flexibility to catch that if you're doing a massive marketing moment, to have this be the time that someone misses something critical. And with that, hopefully I have convinced you that release captains are important and valuable and a good use of your time and your senior staff ICs or staff ICs. So thanks very much.